So, can we just thank Yarlini and Alice in the usual way? Okay, apparently we've done a prize draw early. I think they're worried that people might escape and you might miss the excitement. There's a £500 TUI voucher available if your name is Jackie Murray. I haven't got it. It's somewhere at the back somewhere. I've absolutely no idea. Right then. So we started at 9:15 and I said my energy levels were flagging. I didn't want to do this and blah, blah, blah. And we've now got an hour left. So we're going to finish on a high. Well, I'm hoping we're going to finish on a high. So I'm delighted to introduce our next inspirational speaker, a lady called Christine Armstrong, who's a researcher into the future of work, and she's going to share some insights with us around burnout and how we can increase our energy, happiness and productivity at work. And I suspect it won't go as far as karaoke with the Deputy Director of Finance. But you never know. So I'm going to ask Christine to come to the stage. Thank you.
The music plays. Does anybody want to sing the Celine Dion from last night? Right. Hello, Lee. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Right.
I shall leave you to it.
Fine. Okay, I'm here to talk about energy. And sometimes when I talk about energy, I've got a chart that I show of things that give you energy and things that drain your energy. And I haven't got it today, but on the give you energy, it's things like a really good night's sleep, daylight, a bit of exercise in the morning. And things that drain your energy are getting home at 2 in the morning, having been pissed in a karaoke bar, woken up at 5:30 with slight shakes and really, really thirsty. So we're going to have to work a little bit hard because we've got an hour. I'm going to need you to come with me a bit. You might have to stand up. I'm going to watch how it goes, and we're just going to have to see what we need to do together to keep everybody in the room and alive, if that's all right. So the first thing we're going to do, make sure that... I wrote show of hands to remind myself to do it, but we're not going to do that because you need to move. So we're all going to stand up. So let's just start on our feet. Everybody? Everybody? Okay, lovely. Now, stay standing up if you have ever, not just now, but at any point in your career, felt that you were productive, you're really enjoying your job, and you're happy. All right, everybody stand. Anybody want to sit down because they've never had that feeling? Okay, right. Stay standing up if you've ever had a period in your career when it's okay. You're getting to the end of the day, bit of clock watching. So you can sit down if that's never happened to you, but at any point, could be a student job, you've just been can't wait for 5 o'clock. Right, we're all still standing. Okay, you can sit down now if this hasn't happened to you. Oh, somebody's like, no, I've never been that, I've always been enthusiastic. That's fine, madam, that's fine. We're very proud of you. Hire her, everybody hire her. Right, and has there ever been a period in your career where, honestly, you felt like you were a bit more of a hindrance than a help? You were sort of halfway out the door, you were looking for another job. If you've never had that, you can sit down. But if you have had that moment, you can say, some ladies at the back are like, no, thank you, madam. No. I'm telling you, I take my job seriously. That's fine. Right, a lot of us are still standing up. You can now sit down. Thanks very much. I would have stayed standing up for all of those 3 questions. And the point that I want to make is that Gallup has just released its global 22,000 people breakdown of the workforce. And the fantastic headline that this came out with was, more people thriving at work than ever before. Because in a team of 5, on average globally, 1 person is in that first category of fully engaged. They're really keen and up for it. Okay, so that's 1 out of our team of 5. 3 of them are watching the clock, wondering when they can go home and have their tea and what they're going to eat and what else is going to happen today. And 1 of them is putting a fork in the printer, let's face it, and just generally causing you trouble. They're not doing what you've asked them to do. They're not answering their phone. They're a pain in the arse, let's face it, all right? So that is it. Now, it's really easy when we see this data to go, Yeah, no, I'm great. Lady in white, she's like, yeah, I'm on it, we're good. Right, and everyone else is a bit, The problem is, as that exercise was designed to show, we change. We have periods in our lives where we're fully on it, and we have periods when we're not. So what are the factors that make us kind of, boom, we're here, we're up for it, this is a good job for us. Hearing Alice talk about it is lovely. I'm doing the right job, I'm at the right level. I heard it described yesterday by a German colleague as what you want is a 5-foot manager in a 6-foot pond. Okay, because I don't know why you want to try. You've got to hope they can swim in this. You want a bit of stretch. You want them to have to bounce to the top, apparently. But you don't want it much deeper than that because they might drown. So you need that, that you need a little bit of stretch. It's a very German analogy, isn't it? When he said it, I was like, can we just go back through that again, because I've got a visual. This very short manager. Anyway, that's a bit of a diversion. Okay, right. So what we want to do is think about how we move up and down these groups, okay, and how you, as very important people, and we're going to talk about how important you are today, how you, as very important people, can have some influence, some control over that, both your own energy, but also as role models and leaders, people that they look up to. So now that's slightly depressing. I didn't include this last week when we talked about this, but this is the even more depressing, is that was what I was showing you. I was being nice. I was showing you the global data. The UK data is actually worse, because you need a team of 8 in the UK. I mean, I'm not the accountant. Tell me if I've got the maths wrong. But you need about 8 in your team to have one person who's fully engaged. And then you've still got 72% quiet quitting. But on the upside, it's 15% with the fork in the printer rather than 18. So, it's a little bit better at the darker end of the scale. But if anyone was thinking, I'm not sure, I did have a little amble around some NHS websites to see if I could find something specific. But the way that you guys use statistics, I have to say, after about half an hour, I had to lie down. I was like, you cut it in so many different ways, and I just couldn't make head or tail of it. So what we're going to think about is how people go from often the direction people do. They turn up, they're thriving at work, they're really keen to get a job, they like Alice, I've got my deputy DOF job, I feel really good about it, and then over time that energy depletes. So what are some of the factors that deplete that energy, and what are some of the things that we might be able to do to try maybe and reverse that bottom arrow and make it go the other way? Crikey, I didn't know I did that. That was quite exciting. Right, and then I want to tell you one thing about power. This is dark, right? You're going to have a dark moment. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but let's just go with it for a second. One of the things that we as leaders do is to underestimate our power. So many of you, if I went and talked to you, would say, well, I've got a big job and I've done all right. I'm a CFO. That's pretty cool, isn't it? People, what do you do? I'm a CFO in the NHS. Very impressive. Yeah, that's all right. But actually, the NHS is massive. There's loads of stuff I can't change. There's loads of bananas systems. I can't even get the printer to work in my department, if I'm completely honest. So I'm sort of powerful on one level, and on another level, I'm not really sure how much power I've actually got. And we're going to talk at the end about how much power the people below you think you have. So get ready for that, because I've got some data. We're going to have a real look at what they tell me when I go and see them. Okay, but if you underestimate your power, remember this. Our brains are wired for survival, and the people who are senior to us in the organisation, we depend on them for our survival, right? We need to have a job to pay our rent, to pay our mortgage, to feed our kids, feed our dog, make our world work. If they reject us, our brain goes into crisis mode and thinks, I'm going to be living on the streets with my kids and my dog, okay? So we really care what those people think of us, so we study them really, really carefully. And if I ask you about the senior people above you at work, you'll be able to tell me about them, what they care about, what the issues are, who they don't get on with, what they don't like, how to annoy them really, really quickly, how to make them happy if they're having a bad day. All of that is really clearly mapped in your brain. And if I asked you to do the same thing at the most junior level of your team, you'd be like, yeah, there's somebody who really likes chewing gum, and I think those two are friends because I've seen them together at lunchtime. We can't do it. We just don't have that forensic studying when we look down in an organisation. But guess what? Everyone in your teams, you are that person. You are the person they are studying. So whatever you do is what they are replicating. The reason this is dark is because after 9/11, they did a study of who left the building when the fire alarms went off and who stayed and kept on working. And what would, not you know the answer. What was the answer? Who left and who stayed? Come on, tell me. What was the factor? The boss. You don't have to say it so quietly that I can't hear. Otherwise, I'll get a mic, I'll be in the audience, and then you'll never get to rest. You don't want to encourage that because some of you are hoping this stays quite quiet. Yeah, the boss. So the most senior person in your team that you could see, if they left, you left. If they stayed and worked, you stayed and worked. Ever since I read that report, every time a fire alarm has gone off, I've got up and I've left the building because I never want that kind of responsibility on me. And now all of you will as well. Even if somebody a long way down the hospital has set off the fire alarm in the toasting in the nurses section or something again, you're going to be like, everybody out, everybody off we go. I'm not having this on my conscience. So they are watching you. So it is really, really important what you do. Oh, I hate this build. What's this? All right, so why am I here today? I feel like this is a bit of Friends Reunited for me because everyone I've seen today has come up and gone, I saw you on an online conference once in 2019 and I met you at this away day and I met you here. So I'm really sorry if I say anything that you've heard before. If I do, just start like this and I'll just move on, all right? I don't want to bore you, but I've seen lots of you and it's really nice to be here. But as Lee said, I research the world of work, I take all the big data, I interview people all the time, I do loads of work with your talent pool, with your deputy DOFs and rising DOFs and the people who want to be you, understanding what their issues are. So I'm trying to bring that all together for you today in something that's practical and help you think about your energy and your retention going forwards. I also do a vlog on Fridays, which some of you follow, which is on LinkedIn and stuff, so if you're interested, you can always have a look at that. And I appear on all these funny lists now as well about who's who in the future work and who's who in HR, and I've never worked in HR, so it's all very exciting. Anyway, I thought we would start by talking about Lizzie. I know that you're all finance people, don't worry, I haven't missed the briefing here. So Lizzie is someone that I do know, but she also wrote an article on an online publication that you can read called Noon, as in the middle of the day. And she wrote an article about her experience of working in the NHS and being a nurse. So Lizzie's story. When she was 4 years old, she had heart surgery. She had a hole in her heart. And on the drive back from the hospital, she said to her mum, I want to be a nurse. And I want to be a nurse because I want to take care of people the way the nurses looked after me. Because they sat me up in bed and they gave me bananas and custard and they looked after my teddies and that's what I want to do when I grow up. And her mother apparently still has a picture of her in the attic, a self-drawing of her with a big syringe, like this is what I want to do. So 17 years later, she duly qualifies and goes off to be a nurse. And then, of course, she goes off to the A&E department, which was then called Casualty after the television show. I said that to my husband yesterday, and he said, really? Did they name it after the TV show? It's like, oh my God, it's like Paddington bloody station, isn't it? Anyway, she goes off, she works in Casualty, and she loves Casualty, right? She is the person that you want to see when you are broken, when something is mysterious and gone wrong. So this is actually a picture of her with my husband. I don't know who's squeamish, but I'm really not good with feet. And it involved barbed wire and a big toe and a toenail, and I can't say anything more about it, and that was so disgusting. And she is exactly the person that you want in that environment. And she loves caring for people. She loved the team that she worked in. She was really excited to be learning loads of new things. She loved the buzz. She loved the resus. She really enjoyed all of it. But she resigned, heartbroken, at the end of last year. And what were some of the factors that took somebody who is intrinsically motivated to be a nurse, who is evidently really, really great at it? What was it that depleted her energy so much? Well, that's what we're going to have a look at today and have a little think about. And we're going to move it into the world of offices and finance. But one of the things was the overwhelm. So she talks about going on to 11-hour shifts. We talked about compressed hours this week. Going into an 11-hour shift, you've got 30 people in the waiting room. You run around solidly for 11 hours. You don't stop for a break. You don't stop for a cup of tea. You barely go to the loo. And 11 hours later, there's more people in the waiting room than when you started. And that sense of you're just not getting anywhere. There's just so much to do. The stress of it, she talks about having 3 different patients on the go. There's a lady whose head's been sutured. She's waiting for someone to check she's all right to go home on her own. There's a lad who's broken his arm. She's waiting to get him into theatre to get him set. There's somebody else who's on a drip for an antibiotic. There's all this stuff going on. She's feeling she's not giving any of them enough attention. And she's also feeling that when she goes out for the next patient, she goes into that waiting room, she gets a sarcastic round of applause because they're so pissed off that they've been waiting for so long to see someone. So she's further demoralised. she doesn't have enough clarity. She doesn't know what the systems are anymore because the systems around her are failing. And so the community support person that's supposed to be checking the old lady with a head injury, it's just, there's no one to call, the number's not working, nobody's coming. So this sense that you're just spinning and you're not completing tasks, you're not doing this lady's head, feeling a sense of achievement, sending her out into a community support group where she's safe, and you've done your bit of the job and passed it forward. Community support doesn't turn up. You're waiting and waiting. You know, there's nowhere for the lad with the broken arm to go. And this sort of sense that, God, where are all these systems? She talks about having a teenage girl who's, you know, self-harmed herself with a pencil sharpener blade she's taken out, and there's no one to deal with it. And, you know, it's just this sense of at the end of the night or the end of the day, what have I achieved? You know, with people going around the wheel and there's nowhere for them to go. And then finally, this sense that actually she's invisible in the system, that nobody really cares about her or her team, except when things go wrong. And then the blame game starts. And one of her examples is you're on shift all night, you see loads of people, you're actually feeling like, I've sort of got somewhere, it's been all right. And then you get a letter, she calls it management, I don't know where it comes from, saying, actually, Lizzie, somebody's made a complaint because they had to wait too long to see their x-ray. So could you write back to us and explain what happened? And she's like, are you joking? Are you? So she resigns. So this person resigns. Now, what I want us to think about is say, I know you're not nurses, it's okay, I know you're not, don't feel bad. You're looking at me, I feel really bad about Lizzie. It's not your fault, okay? That's not the point of it. It's not about Lizzie. This is about what do we do in workplaces where we start people off, they feel positive, they feel enthusiastic, and as they go through the system, we either crush that spark or, maybe like Alice, we lift that spark a bit and we keep them stretching. We keep them, the 5-foot manager in the 6-foot pool, not the 7-foot pool. I don't think I can make that work. I'm going to have to go back to the Germans and talk about that a bit more. So let's have a look at some of those factors. So overwhelm in offices, and a lot of you will be experiencing this, and a lot of you, when Alice says to you and shames you all and says, why aren't you all sponsoring people, and a lot of you are thinking, don't look at me, Alice, don't look at me, because I can't get through what I already do. I can't add in another 2 hours a month. I'm so sorry. You seem like a really lovely person. I'd feel really good about myself if I could help someone, but honestly, I just don't know what else I can fit into my schedule. It's not that I'm unkind. Even though one of the things we know about energy producers is that helping other people will actually lift your energy rather than deplete it. So do go back and talk to Alice about that. So when we think about overwhelm, who here has got, anyone got an 11-year-old? About 11? A couple of people. SATs this year? How was that? Yeah? Okay. So SATs, a really interesting exam. And the reason they're an interesting exam is because they reflect more on the school and the teacher than they do on the children. So they're the one exam that schools and teachers see their status very much attached to. Okay? And so they have a very, very high invested interest in our children doing their absolute best work. So what do they do to get the absolute best of those fronted adverbials out of their little 11-year-old heads? Well, they don't do what you see in films where kids are doing exams. They don't, in our school anyway, sit them in huge rooms like this in long rows of chairs. No. The school is invested in good results. They break them up into small groups, 2s and 3s. Each group has a teacher who's there to provide water, sharp pencils. The teachers take off their shoes. They don't want to disturb those little brains when they're focused. No one else in their school is allowed out of their classroom. There is no playtime for anyone. During this test, there has to be absolute silence. And then when they're finished, what do? They open the doors, they run around outside, burn off energy, be wild. They let the whole school out, everybody goes bananas. And then when they go back into the test again, they shut it all down again. Shoes off again, glasses of water, toilet breaks, all the rest of it, right? And then what do we do in the world of work, knowing all we do about concentration and focus? What do we do when we're trying to get an end-of-month report out to the board on our numbers? We turn into the magical 8-armed octo person who is trying to do 8 things at the same time, even though all of the research tells us that our brains do not work this way at all. So we are answering messages, sitting on Teams calls, doing this, doing meetings, blah, 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 responding to this, responding to that. None of us are deeply, deeply focused like those 11-year-olds on those numbers and that report getting out of the door. And then at the end of the day, we go, just got so much to do. I've got to work overtime and I need to do another 2 hours because I just haven't got anything done all day because I've been octo-person, just doing all this stuff. I don't know what I've done, actually. Well, if I said to you, what have you done today? You're like, well, I don't know. I mean, I've just answered about 5,000 messages, but I haven't signed that contract. I haven't, got that deal done that I was trying to do. I haven't signed off that report. And I haven't moved stuff forward. That's very demoralising. It's really bad for our energy not to have that sense of achievement at the end of the day. Now, we know from the data, this is Microsoft data. If you can't see it, don't worry too much. I'm sure someone will send it to you. I'll take a little drink while you read it. It's a bit warm up here. I might take my jacket off. We know that the problem of overwhelm has got worse and worse since COVID. So we've got many more requests for meetings, we've got longer meetings, we've got more people in meetings, we've got more people sort of tentatively accepting meetings because honestly their diaries are full but they don't know how to say no, so they do them anyway. And the most worrying piece of information in many ways is this idea from Microsoft that 42% of us, they say, are multitasking during meetings. But, and this is very significant, only 42% if you're looking at Microsoft products. So if you're on a Microsoft team call and working in Microsoft messaging, it can see that, so that's 42%. If you're doing your WhatsApp or feeding your cat or making a cup of tea or on another phone line, it can't see any of that. So really, I mean, how often do you think people are multitasking on those Teams calls? Anybody want to, don't whisper it too quietly. I don't want this to be a hearing test. Anybody guess it? Always. Anyone else? Just always. Fine, let's just take it, always. So then we're being this octopus person with this octopus sort of brain. And then on top of that, people in maybe HR, I can say that because you're finance, but in an HR conference, I probably blame finance, who knows? Doesn't matter. Somebody decides, well, it's absolute chaos. Everyone's overwhelmed, so let's sort this out. Let's do some agile working, see if that helps. They'll love that. Let's have some no meeting days. That'll sort the problem out. Let's turn off some emails for a bit. We'll see if that works. Let's do a few surveys, see how overwhelmed everyone is. Maybe we could do some 360s, actually. That would be good. I'd like to know how everyone's doing. It's very important to have a talent management program. And then people are just like, I just can't. I just cannot. I can't open it. I'm just trying to do this end of month report. And for all of this stuff that's going around, I can't do any of it. And then we start ignoring all of it. Okay, we just shut it all down. That doesn't really work. And then people go, well, I know, maybe we could theme it. We could have Mindful Monday, Tune In Tuesday, Wacky Wednesday, Thursday, Fish and Chips Friday. That'll sort the problem out. And somebody at the back going, oh shit, yeah, we actually tried that plan exactly. Exactly. How did she know? It's leaked. So then people are just like, are you kidding me? I've got so much work to do. I'm on all these calls I don't need to be on. I'm totally overwhelmed, and yet I'm not getting anything done, and you want me to be mindful on a Monday. Piss off. Right. In addition to that, we've added in some complexity, right? And we've talked about this a little bit already today. So we've gone from sort of one way of working, sort of broadly, you turn up at the office and you do your job, unless you've just had a baby and then you work flexibly and you don't work on Fridays in theory, but you do your emails, but we don't pay you for it and we don't promote you, which is all fine. So we've gone from sort of one way to sort of potentially 5 or 6 different ways, okay? So just to cut through this, because I haven't got a timer, I'm going to run out of time. Most of you are probably working some version of fluid hybrid, some of you fixed hybrid, some of you trying 4-day weeks, some of you are trying about 6 different systems from what I heard this morning, but let's broadly assume most of you are kind of in the middle. So what we do with all of that overwhelm, we then add in some extra decisions. So if we say fluid hybrid, come in when you need to, come in when the team's there. On a Sunday night, in everyone's house, they're going, what days do I go in this week? Well, I'll go Monday, nobody will be that because we'll probably get some work done. I'll go on Tuesday, but my boss is there, but honestly, a bit painful. Maybe I'll go on Wednesday. I'll go on Wednesday, and then their partner, who may also be working in hybrid, goes, you can't go on Wednesday. I've got my team meeting Wednesday. No, wait. Then they have a big row about Wednesday and who's going in. Then they renegotiate it, and eventually they decide on a few days that they're going in. Quite a lot of headspace has gone into that. Then they have to go through a plan and go, well, who's picking up the kids? Where's your mum? Well, my mum's not doing it again, not after that incident 2 weeks ago. And then you got the dog, and then the car needs servicing, somebody's got a dental appointment. Like, this whole thing is like taken up. It's sort of the opposite of Barack Obama wearing the same suit every day so that he had to make fewer decisions. We've given people more decisions to make. Now, when you tell them you want to move from fluid hybrid to fixed hybrid, as in you could choose your days, but now I'd like you in, you're yawning, so you're going to get a lot directed at you now. Now you've got to come in on, I'm sure your singing was great, we can bring it around. Now you're going to come in on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and everybody kind of goes, right, I'm in a mood about this because I want flexibility. Flexibility, that's what I want. And then you go, all right, and then they will send out their CVs and they'll be in a bit of a mood with you for a while. And then actually when I interview them about a week later, they'll go, oh God, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to plan. I know when I need the kids in after school club. I know what day to book the car into the garage. I know when to book the dentist. Everything's just got a bit easier actually. So one of the things that we have to take away is people tell you they want flexibility. What do you want? Flexibility. What do you really want? Actually, people really like predictability. They really like things where they know where they're going. And we'll talk about the 4-day week a little bit more, but that is why, I don't know if any of you have tried hot desking. That is why it doesn't go well. Because the thing is, the research tells us, and they've genuinely done this, say we did this meeting every day for a week. I know none of your livers could cope with it, but say we did this whole thing over a week. By the second day, you'd all sit in the same chair. I don't know, some of you, who's sitting in the same chair from yesterday? The first day to the second day, there's a bit of movement. And then after that, everybody sits in the same chair, unless there's somebody really annoying next to you and there's a proper reason to move, okay? And if I took photos of all your dinner tables at home, you'd probably all sit in the same place every night. You know, Dad sits here, whatever. So, so people don't like hot desking because we're tribal and we're very territorial and we've earned a good desk anyway, and you're not taking it away from me, not a chance. But also because another flipping decision to make. It's another stress point, isn't it? I come in, and I'm a bit stressed this morning, and I've been out and done this and that, and then I haven't got a desk, and then I can't connect to the Wi-Fi, and then I've got a better screen at home anyway, so I might as well just go home, and I've had to pay for the parking. Lee, you knew you weren't going to get away with it. I mean, you've done quite well with the parking, but, you know, it's going to come up. And so a lot of bosses are sort of going, right, so my job now is to protect the energy of my team. I need to lie down in front of all the random stuff. I need to organise it. So this boss in a sales team, so he said, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all those random messages, all the mindful messages, I'm going to put them into one message, send it out once a week so they don't have to read anything else. And then he checked the data and found out that only 40% of the team were reading the one message. So, in actual fact, the answer isn't necessarily to just consolidate stuff. It's to really think hard with your teams or individually, what the heck do we not need to do? And when we look at what people do when they move to a 4-day week, and there's another project that we'll look at, another way of working we'll have a look at, is the first thing you do when you say to people you can have 100% of your pay and 100% productivity, you've got to do the same stuff on 80% of the time, then what do you do? What do you think they say they're going to do? It's up to them. They choose. The teams have to choose it. What do they cut? How do they save that time? Yeah, of course they do. They instantly go through reams of meetings and cut them out. They shorten them if they've got to have them. They put fewer people in them. We know this stuff. We don't need to be told it. If you give it to a team and say, this is the win. And the 4-day week is really popular. It is popular. You know, we talk about it a bit more. There's another model I want you to have a look at. So really, part of this is to think about, so your action point for Monday is, what can I declutter? How do I take myself from octopus person to a more Marie Kondo? Like, what do we actually need to do? What can we drop? And think about that predictability. And it could be any number of things. I'm not going to tell you what to do. It could be cancelling meetings, shortening meetings, declining meetings, cutting process, improving the text, saying no, turning off things, giving people in your teams permission to say no to meetings. Give them a really clear message. You don't have to go to any meeting that doesn't have an agenda or that you have nothing to offer. I don't want you in any meetings where you have nothing to offer. Send that out. Don't hesitate to decline it. Don't think you have to be on it. Just say no with pride. I don't have anything to offer. Get on with what it is that you're supposed to be doing. How great would that feel? Remember, they're looking at you, so if you start doing that. So the question is, imagine work was optimized for work. What would you do? What would you not do? What if you had more power than you think you have? Maybe you do. Right, second, we're going to talk a little bit about stress. So from that Gallup survey, did you experience the following feelings a lot, their capitals, of the day yesterday? 44%. So in your team of 5, you got 2 people experiencing a lot of stress yesterday. And that, of course, leads to burnout. So the sort of darker turquoise line that starts at 40 and goes to 48, I mean, you people are good at reading charts, that's the UK line. So from May 2021 to November 2022, stress, burnout in the UK, people who feel burnt out at work summer all the time, goes from 40 to 48%. Now, that leads to turnover. We're going to talk about turnover a little bit, but that's the big thing that leads to. Now, this is where we talk about stress, and this lovely book has come out, and I know that none of you will read the book, that's okay, but don't worry, he's been on loads of podcasts, he's been on my vlog on LinkedIn, you can find it, you don't have to read it if you don't have the capacity. And what Rob and Karen did was to look at stress in organisations. And what we think about stress, our assumption is it's the really big things that stress us out. So we're combining 2 trusts, we're shutting down a unit over here, we're doing redundancies, whatever it is, that's the stuff. But actually what they say is the stuff that breaks us, the stuff that leads us to burnout, is the small we deal with day in and day out. The really, really small things. It's the technology that doesn't work. It's the team that's always delivering something late. It's the conflict, low-level conflict within teams. And what I would urge you to think about stress as is a ball, okay? Because what Rob and Karen did, I will turn it off. I do go, no, it gets annoying, but it is quite pleasing also. What they did was to say, okay, when we go and interview people, they do these really in-depth interviews, and they interview everyone, they say, how stressed are you? People go, no, I'm fine, it's all fine. And you go, well, actually, and like half an hour later, there are people crying about their failing marriages and the fact they haven't been home for 3 weeks because they're working so hard and they're so stressed and they don't sleep and they're medicated and all the rest of it. But there were about 10%-ish who were much better at handling stress than other people. So then they kind of went deep on those people. Went, what is it that makes you better at managing stress than others? And what can we learn from you that's really practical? So one of the things is that they take control of stuff. They shape some of the problems. So if, for instance, you've got a team that sends you data that you need every week to do some sort of end-of-week reporting, and every week it comes in late and it comes in the wrong format, your guys have sent them a beautiful Excel spreadsheet, and every week they mash up all of your formulas. I'm married to an engineer. I can only imagine what that would do to his brain. And then it comes back and doesn't add up, and it's really annoying. Every single week somebody has to fix it. They've got to put the formulas back in, and it's like, oh, God, that bloody team. They send it every week. The top 10% are the people who just walk towards that and go, right, let's have a meeting with that team. What is it that doesn't work for you? How can we make this easier for you? We really need to have this by 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. Otherwise, so what could we do to make it? So they lean into it, they solve it, right? They figure out ways around the systems, those repetitive stresses. You know, the Wi-Fi doesn't connect, it's not strong enough in part of the building. Who do I need to see? Whose budget do I need to get into to get that printer that would solve this problem or that screen or whatever? They really focus on what those micro-stresses, those repetitive, irritating, 2 people not getting on, fine, let's sit down, have a conversation. Maybe they don't work together, I don't know, but we'll sort it out. But they don't just allow it to keep coming, they take their power. The second thing is, they're really aware of the creation of stress. So if, I'm sorry, because you're dozing again, and I'm going to have to do this to you. If you send me a pissy email, right? It's it's a Thursday night, you send me a really grumpy email, and it says, Christine, I really hoped that you would have sent me the report that I asked for earlier because it was really important. And I'm like, shit. What report? I've missed this. Shit, I don't know, I can't remember. And it's no details. And obviously, you know, there's lots of things I could do, but if I'm feeling a bit defensive and a bit tired, I might send back saying, well, I wasn't briefed about this. I don't know anything about report. I don't even know what it's for. I don't know what this meeting is tomorrow. I've not been invited to it. I don't know why you would be asking for this at 7 o'clock. This is totally inappropriate. Now, sorry, what is your name? Jonathan. Is it likely that Jonathan will respond to me saying, Christine, thank you so much for your email. I do apologise for that miscommunication. Let me explain it all to you, no problem at all. Or is it likely that me having inflated that stress ball that Jonathan has, to be fair, sent me floating it and sending it back at his head, that actually he's going to pump it up and say, below are the various emails that we have sent to your department asking you to send us this report. So why haven't you read them? Then I take Jonathan's, and it's now quite big, this stress, wasn't it? Then I send it out to all my team. It's 7 o'clock. Who didn't tell me about Jonathan's request? I can see your names. You've all been copied and none of you said it. And then Jonathan goes back to his team and he sends it back. He goes, oh, they're rubbish over there. They never do what we ask. Who didn't go and see them? And now both teams, those stress balls that we just saw, they're bouncing through their team, my team, his team. Somebody's forwarded it. Somebody's at home trying to eat their dinner and going, oh, God, Jonathan and Christine are bloody well kicked off at 7 o'clock at work at night. Everybody's annoyed. Everybody's energy is reduced, right? And that's just because so what the people are really good at killing stress at, they stab those footballs. They're just like, Jonathan, I'm really sorry. I seem to have overlooked this. Can we have a chat at 8:30 tomorrow morning? What can I do? Jump on the line if it's really urgent, whatever. They just kill it. They don't rise to the stress. They're really good at going, if I kick a big stress ball out, the place it's coming back is towards me. What we send out comes back to us, okay? So this isn't unself-interested, this isn't generosity, this is self-interest. If you don't want those big, horrible stress balls coming at your head, you've got to kill them when they're small, okay? And then the other thing they do is dimensionality, which is a very odd word, and I thought maybe it was just Americans who knew it, but it isn't that. It's nobody knows what it means, even the Americans have asked them, which basically means that if you've got a life, you get less stressed about stuff. So if at 7 o'clock when Jonathan sends me that, I was halfway out the door going to, I don't know, yoga or meet my friends or whatever, I'd be like, I'm not giving that much time. If I was still at my desk, because I've been on, I've been multitasking all day, got nothing done, then I'm much more likely to engage with it. So the more things we've got going on outside of life, outside of home, the less likely we are to engage in some of this stressful interaction. Oh, okay, so I have a little drink. Any questions about that before we go on to that one? I think we might jump over. Oh yeah, so a question, how could you reduce your stress? So think about those regular stress balls. What are those regular weekly micro-stresses? Make a list of them if you want to now. What on Monday could you go back and say, actually, car parking, like the really regular things that are causing problems, how could I resolve them? What could I do? What could I step into? Maybe just one at a time, you don't need to take them all on. How could I deal with that? I'm going to take out clarity because I think we're going to run out of flow, but I do want to share this with you because I love this, right? And it actually goes to something that came up on the panel earlier, and I really love it. And what it says, exactly to the point, and Lee, you were part of this conversation, if you've got people saying, I don't really want any more responsibility, should you just leave them be and go, fine, just process stuff, or not? And what this piece of research, and it's German again, it's sort of related to the same conversation I had yesterday actually, and there's lots of very technical German versions of this slide, but somebody drew it really clearly for me, is that if people are bored, they get bore out and they start getting really apathetic and low productivity and really disengaged. So actually, as a manager, if people are telling you they're fine and they don't want any more responsibility, it's a red flag. And really, you want to be encouraging them to have another foot of water over their head. I'm going to have to leave this. I need something better. Can somebody suggest something that's less aggressive than drowning your team? Because they get bored, they get weary, and then they bore out. And actually, there is a view that bore out is a bigger problem in a lot of jobs than burnout. So really thinking about if they're overwhelmed and they're stretched too much, the pool's far too deep, then they're burning out. But if they're understretched, then they're boring out. And I think maybe as you're thinking about your teams, just have a think about maybe which side of that central flow. And I think, part of what Alice is talking about being in that flow, sort of stimulated enough and quite engaged and going in the right direction versus both sides of it and having a little bit of a think about that. And I wanted to share this because it really interests me. And Laura Lippmann connected me to Lasse. So Lasse runs a management consultancy in Germany. And they've been doing a program since 2018-19 where they just work for 5 hours a day. That's it. Everybody goes in at 8 and they finish at 1. And it's really rules-based. So you hand in your phone at reception when you go in, and you have 15 minutes at the beginning of the day to do your email, and 15 minutes at the end of the day to do your email. And in between, you're not allowed to accept any meetings on that day, because the idea is you go in, you plan your day, you do deep work, you do proper thinking, you do your job, and then you go. And on a Monday, they have a yoga class at 1. On a Friday, they have a shared lunch. But other than that, you don't have to do the yoga, I don't think. Other than that, you just kind of get on. Now, what do you think when you hear that? Like, what worries you, and what do you think? Does it sound exciting? Does it sound terrible? What do you think? Sounds all right. Yeah? Any concerns about it? Loads. What are your concerns? Yeah, you've got to have quite a lot of control of your culture. Well, you can deal with stuff, but you can't set up a meeting today. The meeting's got to be delayed, yeah. Yeah, so there'd be less drama, so that might be a bit dull, actually. It could be a bit dull. So one of the things about it is that in order for this to work, you have to have quite minimal communications, and everyone has to know exactly what they're doing. So you have to do quite a lot of systems processing in order to make it work. But one of the concerns I thought you might raise was that 5 hours wouldn't be enough time to do your jobs, because actually you need 10 hours in a day. So I thought I'd take us back to a 2016 survey, which looked at how much time people spent doing different things when they were in the office. And this is self-reported, okay? This isn't somebody checking. This is what they actually said when they were asked. So they said that they spent 44 minutes on social media and over an hour reading the news, and then they spent 20 minutes on average every single day looking for another job. 26 minutes on average every day. So how much time did that leave for actually doing work? No, it was about 2 hours and 50 minutes. So actually, a 5-hour day, you're doubling your workload. I mean, this could be like a real boon. If they actually got on and did work for 5 hours, it could be absolutely amazing. So the question there is, how could you help people get more of their work done? What could you protect them for? What systems? And we don't like systems. We're much less comfortable with them in Britain, I think, than the Germans possibly. If anybody feel that that's unfair, do tell me. But, you know, I think people do rally. If you told people they couldn't bring their phones in, I think you'd probably get quite a lot of pushback on that. But what might you be able to do to help people protect their time a little bit more and to focus? I'm going to do not being seen, and then Lee's going to come up and we're going to just chat. Is that right? Yeah, we're going to do some. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay. So I know you can't see this. Don't worry about it. So McKinsey data shows us that when people leave organisations, if you ask managers why they left, they say things like workload, work-life balance, blah, 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 money, whatever. When you ask the people who leave why they left, they say, I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel like my manager cared. I didn't feel like I mattered. Those are the things that make people lose jobs. And what was said earlier is dead right, that people turn to money when their other needs are not being met. When they feel dejected, then they suddenly go, oh, I could get £4,000 more up the road. So then they start making it about money. But when they're happy in a job, that's not why they move on the whole. It's when they're unhappy that then they look for the money. And so one of the concerns I have about some of the conversations about AI, I wasn't in the breakfast this morning, it was a little bit early, even though I did not go anywhere near the karaoke, is this sort of move towards what can we take out of systems using AI? What processes can we put in place? And FedEx in the States tried doing 100% hiring through automated systems for unskilled workers, delivery people, essentially. So everything that you did was automated until the day that you were due to start work. So what happened on day one, when people were due to start, would you guess? Didn't turn up. So 50% didn't turn up. And the other 50%, a lot of them had to be exited really quickly because they were not the right people for the right jobs. So the question that you're going to have as CFOs is when people come to you and say, I've got this amazing piece of AI and it's going to save us the whole recruitment budget, which is an extreme example, but there'll be loads of these, or we can take out this budget or take out that. You have to remember that productivity is directly linked to being seen by managers. And anything that reduces our relationships and our ability to be seen, to be recognised. Remember Lizzie, the nurse, not being seen by the managers, no one notices, nobody appreciates it, patients are all in a mood because they've waited. How do we ensure that the people in our system are seen? Alice feels seen because Jonathan is talking to her every month. That's part of what is making her feel visible. Somebody cares, and then that helps her to build more positive relationships in the business. But the more that we put in systems that potentially decrease that interaction, the harder it is. And I know some of you already struggle with getting clinical leads to approve budgets, respond to messages, all the rest of it. Imagine if that was all automated on a system. Now, maybe if it was really easy, they would do it, or maybe they just go, yes, 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 and never read anything because it was too dull. And sometimes you're going to need to have those conversations. So I think thinking about that is going to be a real question around how you manage energy going forwards. How do we make sure that productivity is part of what we balance when we're choosing systems that look cheaper and easier? And one of the simplest ways to help people feel seen is to spend 10 or 15 minutes per week with every individual report that you have. And the idea of that is that you speak as little as possible. And David can tell you about it, but last week I made them do 3 minutes of just listening to each other, and some of them found it very difficult, didn't they? It's just allowing people to speak. What's on your mind? What problems have you got? What do you need help with? People feel very seen, and the less you can say in those interactions, the absolute better. In fact, when we did this recently with some of the talent pool, one of the people in the group, I don't think they're here today, but maybe they are, came up at the end and said, you know what I realised when we did that thinking thing was that people come to me with problems and they go, I've got a problem with this. And I'm like, oh, right, have you tried this? They go, oh, yeah, no, I have actually, but it didn't work because of this. And I'm, oh, right, could you try that? Well, I looked at that, but I can. And then at the end, he goes, well, what do you think? They go, well, I actually came to you to ask if I could try this. And he thinks, actually, I could have shortened this conversation. I could have done it in 5 minutes. I'd just shut up and let them go, I tried this and this, it didn't work, so I thought I might try that. And all you went was, yeah, sounds sounds great, try that, give so-and-so a call, see what happens. So actually us saying less makes other people feel more seen, and being able to really hold yourself back from fixing everyone else's problems and letting people think about it and solve themselves makes them feel much better about it, even though we think, because we're in charge, we ought to be able to tell them. The other thing, and this did come up today, and it was actually a really nice data point today, wasn't it, was that there's a direct link between happiness at work or engagement at work and training accreditation. And so we do know there's a huge hunger for training and development. So anything that you can do to embed a culture of training and development, and obviously you're all here today, which is fantastic, is really useful. Now, I told you that I would tell you how much power your teams think that you have to make changes. So what I did at a recent talent development pool session was I gave them all magic wands and unlimited budgets and unlimited power. And I said, you go off into your groups and you create the very, very best world of work that you can possibly imagine, okay? If you want to fly to work on unicorns and avoid the car parking fees, that's fine. You can stable them out back. I don't care. You can have Harry Styles on reception singing you in to the work in the morning. I don't mind. Unlimited budget, okay? So they could really do anything that they wanted. And I know you can't read this, but this is the kind of thing they came. This is quite a good example. Do you know what they wanted? They wanted lunch. They want lunch breaks. They do want the free car parking, sorry. They want clear deliverables. They don't want to have a dress code. They'd quite like breakfast breaks. They'd like to be recognised for a good week. They want to be values-led. They'd really love the Wi-Fi and the printers to work really, really well. Okay, these are the most easy to deliver and simple things. So then I said to them, all right, well here, in a different colour, in the black pen, put a tick by anything that you think that your boss could implement tomorrow if they wanted to. And look how many ticks. And I said, put a dot by anything you think they could influence. And they put a dot. I've got about 10 of these. You can see all of them. I mean, we can share them around. But the point is that they didn't ask for unicorns or Harry Styles. What they want is things that are within your power. Shorter meetings, shorter documents, fewer meetings, less PowerPoint, lunch breaks, team development. These are not beyond our power. And you can go back into your teams and have these conversations and say, if I made this a really productive meeting, what would I do? And let them tell you. Let them do this for you and tell you what it is. And then, remember 9/11, step into your power, remember those micro-stressors and go, right, what can I actually fix? Let me just make a list and see what I can actually fix. Or maybe influence. Maybe I don't think single-handedly many of you can just go, right, we're doing a 4-day week in this department. But maybe it's a trial. Maybe it's a conversation you can have. Maybe you can look at some data from some other trusts, because I know other people have done really, really good. Because what we're trying to do is to take those quitters, particularly the quiet quitters, and bring them back. Bring them back into productivity, bring them back into an engagement they might have had earlier in there when they started, or they might not have had because they may not be in the right, and just work out how we might actually go about that. I did tell you, I'd tell you what Lizzie did. So Lizzie stayed in the NHS and went to a GP surgery. And what the GP surgery was able to offer that the hospital wasn't, was time slots that felt like there were enough time to spend with patients, systems that broadly work, and a manager that she sees twice a day at the beginning and the end of a working day who checks in, and a really clear escalation process. So actually, not massively complicated. It wasn't about money. It was simply about having some of those needs that she has to do a job to be recognised. So I'm going to leave you there. We're going to do questions. But what I want you to take away is you have more power than you realise. And what you do is being studied by everyone else. So you need to step into that power. Sound like an Instagram ad, but step into your power. Step into your power, own your power, and figure out what you can change to make it better for your team. No one needs unicorns. No one expects unicorns. It's okay. Don't make this something that's undeliverable. But they are looking at you. And if you can't figure this out, there's some really lovely data, I haven't got time to show it today, about how unbelievably damaging and expensive and unproductive turnover is. It's the one number that we should all be thinking about. If you're not sure, this book comes out in September. It's all about energy. I'm not going to talk about it now. And if you want to see more of what I do, I've got vlogs and so on. So that's where we're going to leave it. Oh. Right, what do you want to ask?
I want to know.
Oh, shit.
I'm actually feeling quite nervous at this point because this is completely unscripted and can go anywhere. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had muesli. I think there's two sorts of people in a hotel breakfast bar. I've got a theory about it. Sorry, this wasn't what you were asking. And either you kind of go, I don't often go to hotels, so I'm going to go big and go everything, you know, like the big pile. And I used to do that. And now I've got to the point where I go, I just want some muesli and some fruit. And they're usually rubbish on the fruit, and they were today. So it was disappointing, but I got through.
Well, I'd just like to have that much energy first thing in the morning. So key things in this.
Yeah.
You've got loads of energy.
Yeah.
None of us should be emailing Jonathan Wood because we're not quite sure what we'll get back.
He can send a vicious email, apparently.
It's really interesting, that Post-it note, isn't it, with the things that have got all the ticks on. I recently did an exercise with a whole load of my team in one of my organisations. And the thing that they want, well, there were two things that were fascinating. One thing they wanted was screens. Yeah. Everybody wants 2 screens now. They've still got some old ones. And I'm sitting there going, why are you asking for this at the start of the year? Surely if we'd have had this conversation 6 weeks ago, we could have sorted it anyway. But so that was
Micro-stress.
That was really interesting. But the other thing that was quite amusing was in the entrance to this particular hospital, there's a drive, and there's a zebra crossing. And they wanted the zebra crossing to be made less dangerous.
Oh, that's nice.
Which and this came up multiple times from the staff. I'm like, so I said, what do you mean dangerous? Because I'd come into the hospital through a different entrance. And they said, well, it's dangerous, it's really busy and cars flying about. So I went to see, I thought, I can sort that. So I went to see, so their idea was you could put some speed bumps either side of the zebra crossing, job done. Went to see the estates director. I said, we've got a bit of a problem, you can sort it out. He said, great idea, Lee. Problem is, ambulances and speed bumps don't go together. And it's the main ambulance way into the hospital, and tends to be the ambulances that fly through there.
Right.
So I've had to go back to the team and say to them, you can have your screens, you can have the windows so the wind doesn't howl through, but we can't do a great deal about the zebra crossing. And when I explained to them about why we couldn't do anything about the zebra crossing, they went, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
And that's off the list now.
Yeah.
So I do think there is something in there about the simple things.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, I don't think they're after unicorns and Harry Styles. I think it is all about small things.
Yeah.
And I'm particularly interested in what Donna was saying earlier about 4-day working weeks and things like that. Because there is an emerging and growing body of evidence about how productive that can be.
There is, but it's also all put out by the 4-day week campaign, so I would urge you to read it with caution because it is quite loaded. That is my take, that's my professional take, because I get bombarded with their stuff all of the time. It works really well for some groups, it doesn't work well for everyone. People who love it, anyone want to guess which demographic most loves the 4-day week? Go on. Come on, don't be shy now.
I liked it 20 years ago when I had a young child.
Men love a 4-day week, women less so. So men love it because then they take up golf or cycling and disappear for a day. Women quite like it because they do all the shopping, cleaning, organising, all the WhatsApp messages on the Friday so they can actually have a weekend. So we use it really differently. But it is very popular. Most organisations haven't implemented the way they're supposed to, and a lot of them have added 2 hours onto the working day, and that can make it much harder for obviously childcare or elder care or whatever else you've got going on. And a lot of working parents with school days would go, I'd much rather do a 9 till 3, 5 days, be able to do the school run. Actually, that would work out better. So it's not like a magic wand, but it is worth, sort of playing with and just seeing what different demographics like.
As you said in one of those slides, there are multiple.
Sure, there's lots of options.
Arrangements that are starting to proliferate, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, Amazon's advertising jobs now just in school term time. I mean, if you were looking for talent, I'd say, well, if you can manage that in some way, if there are ways around that kind of like, what are people actually looking for? What can you offer? Those sorts of things I think are really interesting. And somebody mentioned earlier, keeping on people after retirement dates, a day a week, 2 days a week, keeping the talent in the system really valuable as well. Yeah. So just being quite creative about it, I suppose.
Certainly, if we extend the conversation outside of just the finance functions, but into the clinical arenas, retention of staff. When you've spent so much time and effort getting hold of them, to then lose them when you can avoid it through potentially just a little bit of imagination and flexibility is almost criminal.
Yeah, it is, and
argue.
quite depressing in a way, isn't it? When you got up to 200,000 vacancies in the NHS.
Absolutely. Okay, any questions for Christine from the floor?
They just want their lunch, if I'm honestly. They're like, do you know what? I've been
The
up till 2 in the morning.
The problem with these lights is you can't actually see.
No, you can't see.
You can't see who's
there's
yawning.
a chap at the back. Are you waving? Were you waving or yawning? Or drowning? David.
Ah, Mr. Chandler.
I'll ask you a question. I don't know if I need the microphone, but it's usually so yeah, David Chandler, North East North Cumbria, and great to see you again, Christine. So I love a good book. You put a few on the screen there. So if I'm going to download a book,
Yeah.
because I'm, Kindle and all that,
Yeah.
which one am I going to download?
I do micro-stressors if it appeals to you. I really like it. It's really readable, and I really like what those guys have done. The energy one I am obsessed with, but I mean that might be so the energy one, which I put up at the end, hang on, let's go back a slide so you can look at it.
Do you need more energy? Is this why you read this, Christine?
Are you a bit scared about next year? Like, don't invite her back. It's like, Jonathan's going, not her, anyone but that bloody woman in the suit. So the reason I like this, so she's a neuroscientist and a PhD, and what she talks about is what, can I go on a little bit of a one?
You can do it.
So she talks about what depletes our energy and what builds our energy. And one of the things that she says that really depletes our energy is not being ourselves, not being honest. So whenever we're confronted with any problem, what she says is you've got a discomfort, and you can call it irritation or stress or anything, but she calls it pain. So it's all the same part of the brain. Basically, you've got a problem, you've got some sort of pain. So say Lee's being really annoying, and he's my boss, right? And that's causing me a bit of pain. And then I go in on Monday morning, I'm feeling quite enthusiastic about something that I'm working on, and I'm like, Lee, right, I've had this idea, and I think we could do this. And Lee's like, I'm not sure actually, mate. I think you need to involve Jonathan. Jonathan's like, oh, God, that bloody woman again. And then I think you need to actually go through these systems. And I'm like, oh, my energy's going down and down and down. But, just sort of, well, if you check in with me every half hour, then I know my energy's completely depleted. Now, I've got two choices now. I can either say, do you know what, Lee? I'd really love just to have a week just to see how I get on. So is that something we could chat about? But that, what she calls, that's stepping into a different kind of pain. Because what our brains are wired for is to keep us alive, okay? And Jonathan's my boss, so I want him to be happy. So it's much easier for our brains to go, okay, Jonathan, I'll go and do that then. And my energy is depleted. And every time I do that, my energy reduces a little bit more and I feel a bit more enthusiastic. Jonathan doesn't know because I've not told him. He just thinks he's doing his job. Sorry, Lee, I've mixed names, Lee. Lee thinks he's just doing his job and he's called Jonathan now. There's a lot going on here. But if I step into that more difficult pain, my brain tries to protect me from that because it says, well, if you piss off your boss, you might not have a job and then you've got much more pain. So actually, it's much better not to challenge it, just go, yeah, okay, fine. But actually, what she said, every time we step into that harder pain, that more powerful pain, then we actually increase our energy. So what we have to learn to do ourselves is to go, I've got a problem and I'm going to take the slightly more difficult path. I'm going to change the energy a bit and say, okay, I don't want to fight with you, but could we try something? Because, this is how I feel about it. And you're likely to have much better conversations. But if we're a boss that suppresses that because we're busy, because we're stressed, you're reducing everyone's energy. So every time somebody doesn't tell you what's stressing them out or, that they're not saying what they really think, they're reducing their own power and their energy. So I think it's quite an interesting way to look at it. I don't think I gave it justice. When she explains it, it's really quite clear. When I explain it, it's a little bit all over the place today.
Not at all. Not at all. And any other questions? No? Oh, there is one there. Sorry.
It's the bright light, sorry.
Hi, that was really, really invigorating, and I'm just thinking about this sort of paradox, I guess, between people saying they want absolute flexibility but actually predictability. And I noticed on that team list that someone had written work anytime, anywhere, anywhen, and God, it gave me the cold shivers. I thought, oh my God, 24/7.
I hadn't done the talk on
yeah.
I hadn't told them they like predictability, because we don't think we do.
No.
And we're all told that we want flexibility. Sorry,
have you worked, well, that's what I was going to say. Have you worked with teams to help them work through that paradox and get them to a point where there's a realization of, no, actually, I want a bit of certainty?
Yeah. So my colleague Sam does that, actually, and it's really interesting. So she sits down with teams and says, what do you want? And kind of goes through, like, how do you want to communicate? When do you want to work? When do you want want to meet, and so on. And a lot of what they come up with is actually sort of a mix of food and fix. So a lot of teams will say, if you've got a quarterly cycle, where they'll get to is to say, right, at these points during that quarterly cycle, this is when we need to be together as a group, and this way. So it's predictable, but it isn't like it's not random every Monday, Tuesday, or whatever. It's kind of like, right, we need to be here for this sign-off meeting, we need to be here to discuss the strategic piece, we need to be here to review the oncology budgets for next year, whatever it is. And then people are really happy to do it because A, it is predictable over that 3-month cycle, and B, it has meaning for them. So it has a reason, and that works really well, except when it fails. And when does it fail? Go on, guess. When does it all fall apart and go tits up and all rubbish? It's all your fault. When the bosses don't follow it. So then if you don't turn up to the meeting that you've agreed to, and then you do turn up to something when they weren't expecting you, then it starts to all wobble. So it only works, these agreements, if the leaders of the team stick to them. So if you agree you're not going to email except in a crisis after 6 o'clock, and then the next night you're at 10 o'clock going, just wanted to remind everyone that you have to bring a cake on Thursday for the Macmillan sale, then it's all over.
So there is something about the shadow that we cast.
Yes, big shadows. You don't understand your power. Most of us don't. We don't understand our power as bosses. Oh, somebody's got a question there. No, it's the IT person.
Possibly not.
No.
Okay. Anything else? In which case, I'd like to thank Christine for bringing the session to a close with some degree of energy. And I think there's some. I think clearly there's stuff in there for us to take away, isn't there, and think about particularly about for the CFOs in the room about the shadow that we cast and the stepping into that. Because I think that's really quite thought-provoking. So will you join me and thank Christine?
Thanks very much.
Okay, so it's just turned 1 o'clock, so we're about to close the conference. So I need to thank everybody for attending and for those who've watched online. I want everyone to share everything that they've learned over the last 2 days. As I was talking to a colleague last night, I don't think the NHS is terribly good at sharing best practice or good ideas and innovation. So the more we can do of that, the better. Apparently, feedback forms will be circulated via email, so we will be very grateful if you can complete that. And I want to finish with one comment, really. We just did that, when Yolini did that little survey, we had some interesting responses, and there were a couple of comments from the floor about the answers to the poll and the fact that as finance directors, so this is aimed at the finance directors, we do need to make sure that we are really at the vanguard of being able to not only identify but support our EDI, ambassadors, the whole agenda, and the leadership role that we play. And that goes back to the comments that Christine's just made about the shadow that we cast. So I think we ought to just take a moment just to think about that as leaders in our own organisations, in our own systems, because we do have a vital role in promoting that agenda. Okay, before we finish finally, I believe, Peter, that we have to say thank you to the ladies and the team, if I may, involved in organising all of this today. So sat at the back, I can see Sophie, I can see Grace,